Right.
Next, I want to talk about all the good that's happening. You know, I typically focus on news that will help us become prosperous as people, the human family. But before I talk about what we can do to make sure we have wealth for our families and our posterity, meaning our future generations, can you let me in on what's going on in the global markets? And we talked about, real estate, rare earth minerals, precious metals, the automobile industry, all of the markets. And you're going to talk, so you're going to introduce another phenomenon that most of us haven't heard about as it relates to the world markets. What is going on the world stage that we need to pay attention to?
Well, currently the world is de-dollarizing, right? Everybody is
Mm,
fleeing the dollar.
okay.
So over the last 80 years, the world has been the U.S. dollar has been the world trade currency. So every
Mm,
country, whenever they want to do trade amongst each other, for example, if China wants to buy from Japan, they've had to use the U.S. dollar. That creates a strong connection to the U.S. for all of the countries that are using the dollar, and it has been weaponized by America, right? So if you go against the U.S., they will sanction you, right? They will hold
mm,
your money, and you will not be able to access that money. So a lot
oh,
of countries are now fleeing the dollar. They're actually selling their bonds, right? So the U.S., when we talk about the trade deficit, the one, excuse me, when we talk about the U.S. deficit between the amount of spending that we do and the amount of revenue that we bring in, we have $5 trillion in revenue that we bring in taxes, but we
mm,
spend $7 trillion. So there's a $2 trillion deficit. The way
okay.
we make up that deficit is by issuing bonds, right?
Okay.
So other governments buy those bonds. But what you've been seeing over the last year or two is these countries actually selling off these bonds.
Mhm.
And we are currently looking for more buyers. No one in the global market is right now buying the US bonds.
Mm.
So now you have the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the buyer of last resort. So
Okay.
yeah, so when nobody else buys, the Federal Reserve buys the bonds. All right. So by how they do that, they print more money, right? And
Mm.
then that causes the inflation so that we incur the costs.
And the Federal Reserve is connected to the United States Incorporated. That's their monetary system, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So they've been buying up the bonds, which means that I would assume that it looks like the markets would be doing well. Is that how are they propping up the market by buying up their own bonds?
Yes. They're buying bonds and they're also buying up stocks. Right. So
Mm,
the stock market right now is artificially inflated because we have major corporations and the Federal Reserve buying up stocks to prop up the stock
mm.
market.
Okay. And we're going to get to this. Thank you for your question. We are going to have a question and answer period. I don't know if this is the right time to bring up this question, Mr. Lattimore, but someone wants to know. This is Alicia. I'm sorry, Alicius. Can you please touch on the government still meeting about the looming shutdown?
Yeah. So the government shutdown is actually due to the fact that we can't finance our bills. They're giving different excuses, but right
Right.
now we're actually literally, again, we have a situation where we cannot finance all of what we our expenses are, and
Mm,
so we're going to have to cut spending. Right. It's difficult for the society to accept how they're going to have to slash cut funding. Right. So the best way to do that is with the government shutdown. So that is a perfect excuse for why we will see, for example, more jobs being cut in the
Mm.
federal government, right? Well, this is going to be the reason why we're going to see more spending being cut by the government as well, right? So it's just like a household. If you have too many expenses, and you have more expenses than you have revenue or income, then you have to cut your spending, right? So America is looking at where we can cut our spending.
And it's interesting, they say the government shutdown is looming, as if they don't know that they already had planned to shut down the government.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when they reopened the government, they said that they would only be extending it until January 31st.
It sure did.
And that they would have to come back to the table and agree on their expenses. So this is all about the finances of the government. How can we finance our debts?
And you had told me before that they didn't make enough money during the holidays. So I think that was you, that they didn't make enough money. So what they did was they shut down the government on September the 30th, which was at midnight, which led to October 1st, my birthday. They shut it down, but they reopened it November, December to, I think, to generate spending between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but they didn't make they didn't make a whole lot of money. And so what they did is they did this panic spending by causing a storm, an ice storm across America, telling everybody we're going to have an ice storm. People rushing to the stores to buy things, in a frenzy, panic spending. And what it looks like was probably because they didn't make enough money during Thanksgiving and Christmas. And now here we are at the end of January about to have another government shutdown. And like you said, they just don't have enough money. They'll try to do things to get you to spend money, but they don't have enough.
Yes, and even during the holiday season, because when you consider the holiday season, the
Mhm.
holidays is the biggest time of spending in the country for the year,
Okay.
right? So that's when companies are expecting to have an abundance
Mm.
of revenue coming in. Not only did they not make a lot of what they expected, but also there were a lot of returns on items that were bought after the
Oh,
holiday season.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that obviously affects these corporations even more. So they need money, and we're actually right now at having a liquidity crisis,
Hmm.
meaning that we do not have enough cash as a country, right, to keep the economy afloat.
Mm.
Right
So
now, when you look at the the financing of major corporations, right? The
Mhm.
corporate financing usually um, corporate financing you usually get a 3 to 5 year loan, and
Okay.
then you have to refinance your loan, right? 3 years ago, 5 years ago, these companies were getting loans at close to 0% interest rates. So it was what they were calling free money, right? So when the uh, when the economy is doing well, it allows for the banks to lend out money without discretion, right? Without really looking at the books of the companies that they're loaning the money to.
Okay.
When you have a crisis, that's when the banks have to be more concerned about who they're lending the money to. Also, when you go back to the fact that you have to refinance these loans 3 to 5 years later, and we're at that point right now where these companies are having to refinance. They're not financing at the 0% interest rates that was previously given. They're now refinancing these loans at 6 and 7% interest rates, which
Mm.
that means that these companies actually cannot afford to pay the loans. So we're having a lot of bankruptcies that are occurring behind the scenes.
Is this why we've heard some rumors about, and it might be true, might not just be rumors, about Amazon laying off tens of thousands of people, and I think UPS even? Is that
Yes,
related to what you're talking about? Okay.
yes. So
Okay.
UPS and uh, Amazon, as you mentioned, just laid off about 15,000 people, I believe.
Mm. Okay.
That was just a few days ago. So they've been laying
Okay.
off a lot of people. And then you also, when you talk about liquidity crisis, people don't have money, right? So
Right.
over the last few months, companies have been overproducing with the expectations that they would have buyers, right? So now
Mm,
they don't have the buyers that they were expecting because people are in a money crunch. So
mm.
the first thing that you do as a company when you have oversupply and you can't sell that, you start firing people to cut your expenses. And so companies are cutting their expenses by laying people off.
Okay. Okay. Whew. Okay. So we talked about, the bond market somewhat. Someone wondered, is it a good idea? I don't know if you give this type of advice, but is it a good idea for people to buy bonds in order to diversify their portfolio?
It is a strategy that most financial advisors give. In fact,
Okay.
the vast majority of financial advisors will say to invest 60% in stocks and 30%, or excuse me, 40% in bonds.
Mm,
But right now, this year and last year, they've actually, for the first time, been advising people to invest in hard assets, gold and silver.
okay.
So, in fact, this is a time where people are not buying bonds. So, I
Mm.
would be leery of the bond market. And if you do invest in the bond market, you should study it thoroughly.
That's something you told me a long time ago when I asked you, what should I invest in? This is when I was first thinking about gold and silver. You said, first of all, you have to invest in what you understand. So study. And then you said, invest in what you can afford. So always look at your budget and see what your budget allows. So I'm glad you said people need to study the bond market before they just dive in.
Absolutely.
Yes. So go ahead. We're going to say something.
I was going to also mention the yen carry trade. So, you have a lot of investors have been investing in the yen, the Japanese yen, because their interest rates have been close to zero for the last 30 years.
Okay.
Now, what they do is they'll get loans and get money from the Japanese market, and then they'll invest that. They've been, for the last 30 years, they turn around and invest that money in the stock market in America
I
and
see.
invest in also different assets in America. Well, last year, and this been continuing on this year, Japan has been increasing their interest rate, right? So that uh, decreases the strategy. I'll say that the
Mhm.
companies have been having, and the profitability of the companies buying into the U.S. market. So now you have a lot of investors, foreign investors, that are pulling their money out of the US stocks and investing it back into Japan and also into other countries. So this is why when you talk about the stock market being a bubble, this is why people are considering it to be a bubble, because a lot of companies, whether it's countries that are using the yen carry trade to invest in the stock, or it's the US government, or it's US corporations reinvesting in their own company, buying their own stocks. This has created the inflation that we see or have seen over the past 3 to 5 years. And people are expecting that real soon there's going to be a correction in those prices.
Mm. Okay. So that we're talking about the stocks and the bonds. So now we know that we need to be leery or at least educate ourselves on the bonds. And you're saying maybe the same about the stock market?
You have to look closely. Yes, you have to look closely at the stock market and decide what you want to invest in.
Mm,
Right now, the S&P 500 is, that's the tech stock market. It's
okay.
been doing well for the last 5 years, but we've actually had all-time highs for the last 3 years consecutively. So that doesn't normally happen. And usually after a certain point, you do hit a recession. And so people are expecting that a recession is right around the corner, if we're not in a recession, right now.
I've heard people say that they've actually lost money in their retirement accounts, and I'm assuming that the stock market is attached to their retirement accounts. Can you speak a little to that? Why is that happening?
Okay, so yes, retirement accounts are connected to the stock market.
Okay.
Right? That's actually what they're invested in. So you
Mm.
put money into your IRA, to your retirement account, and your company invests, a portion into your account as well. They're investing specifically in the stock market, but generally the employees don't know what stocks they're invested in. And
Mm.
oftentimes they're invested in junk stocks, right? Not the stocks that are doing exceptionally well, like the AI stocks. So that actually helps to prop up the stock market as well, because you have all of these retirement accounts that are attached to the stock market. So that boosts the stock market. But when you have any type of crises, then you'll see it in your IRAs, because it will affect the stock market and thus affect your IRA.
And you have no control over that, sounds like.
Well, that's the thing is, when you have an IRA attached to your company, it's a passive way of investing, right? Versus an active investor actually knows the stocks that they're invested in. All right.
Okay.
So a lot of most people don't know what their IRAs hold, right? Which they generally hold stocks and bonds. But if you don't know what you're holding, then you don't know why it goes up and you won't know why it goes down.
So one of the things that I've been telling people is that if they are able to, because everybody can't pull their money out of the stock market, and I'm not telling them to do this, but if you desire to roll over your stocks into a gold IRA, or your IRA, your investment to a gold IRA, you can. And there are companies like Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company that will allow you to do that. If you're interested in doing that, then I would encourage you to give Andy Scheckman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, a call, or any of their brokers at 952-929-7006, or you can send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know that Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you, so you can get the best prices in the industry. Now, while you're getting a Go IRA, this program allows for you to actually take some of the physical gold into your possession. So that's just an idea out there if you are interested in taking your IRA and rolling it over into something that's a little more tangible, that's attached to the gold markets. Dexter, where do we go from here? We talked about stocks and bonds, but I know you had a lot to say about what you called the everything bubble happening. What would you like to take a discussion from here?
Well, I would say that the soundest investment right now is hard metals, all right, the
Okay.
precious metals, whether it
Okay.
be gold, silver, and copper. As we see, the copper prices have been going up this year substantially.
Not only are they
Um,
going up, in many places you can't even find it. They don't have any copper available.
because there's a run. Everybody's running to the precious metals. And
Mm.
again, financial advisors almost never, for the last 30, 40 years, almost never advise their clients to invest in hard metals, right? Because it does the economy well for everybody to be invested in the stock and the bonds, right? That's
Okay.
where
Okay.
everything moves up. And then when you're invested in hard metals, that's secure for you, right? As an investor, that's a secure way of knowing that your money actually has value. So
Mm.
now, right now, everybody, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people are fleeing outside of the stocks and reinvesting at least a portion or a percentage amount into gold, silver, and copper.
Mm.
So that would be the sound investments that the people are flocking to currently.
Now, why metals? What's so significant about metals like gold, silver, and copper?
Well, they have a store of value, right?
Okay.
We know the value that they have, right? We
Mm,
know that they have practical use versus Bitcoin, for example. No one can tell you
right.
the practical use for Bitcoin. They say, okay, we have Bitcoin mining stocks, but who mines Bitcoins, right? And how
Mm,
can you use them practically, right? It's a financial instrument that was created similar to the dollar, and the attachment to the Bitcoin is your imagination, but it's not attached to anything aside from that.
mm, mm. Okay. So hard assets. And then you said something to me earlier. I think it was either today or yesterday. You said if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So
Absolutely.
we talk about Bitcoin, we talk about stocks and bonds. Those things they have value, but you know what value silver and gold have, and you own it when it's in your hands.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Also, it's actually a good time to look into the housing market, right? Because we've
Mm.
actually been seeing a deflation of the housing market over the
Okay.
last year. So, had the housing market hit all-time highs a few years ago. They were at ridiculous prices because we had foreign investors, we had corporations buying up all of the houses, which skyrocketed the
It
housing
did.
market, created
Hmm.
created the scarcity, as well as the immigration. Right, we had tens of millions of new immigrants come into the country
Right.
over the past few recent years. Um, they have been since deporting a lot of uh, people, and this is causing the housing market to cool down. So we've been seeing, if you look at what's the on Zillow, for example, they said about half of the houses on their market have taken decreases over the last year. So if you look on Zillow, you'll see like 10%, 20% decreases in the prices, and
Mm.
that's expected to continue.
So we heard that before about a housing bubble. Now, what does that mean exactly? Is that what you just explained?
Yes, if you remember the housing crisis in 2007,
Hmm.
right, when the housing market crashed, right, it dropped the prices substantially, right? But that actually meant that a lot of people lost their wealth because in America, most people's wealth is stored in their house, right? It's tied to their
Okay.
house.
Okay.
So
Mm.
the majority of their wealth is the ownership of the house. So once you lose that house, that means that you've lost a lot of your wealth, if not all of your wealth.
Mm.
Um, and then also, if the housing market, so say you bought a house 3 years ago for $300,000, and you go to sell that house today that house is not going to sell for $300,000, right?
Okay.
You're going to have to sell it at a much cheaper price. And so
Mm.
that means that you're going to take a hit, right, financially. And if for the new buyers, it's good, but for the sellers, it's a problem.
Okay. Okay. Speaking of it being good for the buyers, Sister Linda said, yes, the immigrants are losing their property now due to deportation.
Yes.
Now, how is that a benefit for Americans, though?
Well, you have supply and demand, right?
Okay.
So when there's a high demand for any goods,
Hmm.
then and there's a scarcity, right? So when we're talking about the housing market, for example, if you have an influx of people coming to buy the same amount of houses that we have, then the prices of those houses are going to go up astronomically.
Okay.
Now, when people leave those houses, the prices are going to go down because the demand goes down based on the fact that there are fewer people that are needing those houses.
Interesting, because this is an opportunity for people who have held cash.
Yes.
Now, that immigrants are leaving those, because some of them had whole neighborhoods, and we pray that they do well in their countries, but they had whole neighborhoods. So there are businesses that are vacant, commercial property that's now vacant, houses, apartment complexes, whole apartment complexes that are vacant. So I would like for you to speak to how, even in the middle of a recession and depression, if you are prepared, you can, and avail yourself, you can actually accumulate wealth.
Well, Warren Buffett over the last year has been advising people to store cash, to hold cash. That's
Okay.
because when a recession hits, when a depression hits, the prices of most goods goes down substantially.
Mm.
But when you have a liquidity crisis that we're in right now, for example, where most people don't have cash, then those who hold the cash will be the buyers, and you can buy things for pennies on the dollars. So even the stocks, right now, I would say don't or be leery about investing in the stock market, the AI
Mhm.
stocks, I'll say in particular, not
Mhm.
the stock market as a whole, but know what you're investing in, and then give time for these stocks that are high priced to correct, because
Mm.
there will be a correction, and you'll be able to invest in these stocks at pennies on the dollar.
Very wise, because a lot of us are trying to get rid of the USD. We've heard information. I've said it even, that the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all the nations that are attached to the BRICS bloc, they have stopped trading with the USD. So some of us are like, well, let me get rid of this United States dollar, which is collapsing, is declining in value. But I hear you saying that Warren Buffett, and you as an economist, also suggest that you hold on to some of the cash so that you can buy up assets like houses, real estate, land, some of these commercial properties that are now vacant due to the immigrants being deported. Very,
Yes.
very wise. Very, very. We'll talk about that a little later, about what your portfolio should look like. So I wrote down there that cash should be part of your portfolio. But before we go into that, what else would you like to talk to us in terms of the everything bubble? I just think that's a very fascinating asset.
Well, just that
Concepts.
everything
Very fascinating
is,
concept.
everything is tied into each other, right? When we talk about the AI uh, stocks, all of these companies are investing in each other, right? So I sent you
Okay.
that picture where you have NVIDIA is tied to OpenAI. OpenAI is tied. They're all taking the same money. Uh-huh.
So what is it? Which one is it? Open AI, that one? Or
Yes.
Shadow? Okay, Open AI. I'll bring it up. Family, if you are enjoying this conversation, we have Dex Lattimore, who is an economist, and you have a business. You have a degree in international business. Is that right as
Yes.
well?
Yes. A
Okay,
concentration in international business.
a concentration in international business. This is who we have on our show. If you're interested, he is working on a book. If you're interested in supporting his work, you can send a donation to $Dex Lattimore, and we'll show you where you can find his work. So I'm going to bring this up for you, Mr. Lattimore, here. This is the right one, the right image?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of these companies are investing in each other, right? So they're not generating the money that they're perceived to be generating, because
Okay.
what they're doing, they're taking whatever profits that they have from one company and tying it to the next company. So if one company does poorly, that's going to affect all of the companies, right?
I see.
Then you have, if every company is expecting for AI to boost their productivity and it doesn't happen, then again, that's attached, those companies are attached to the AI, along with the stocks being attached, the general stock market being attached to AI, right? Over the past 3 years, once AI hit the scene, everybody expected that it was going to boost production substantially.
Mhm. Mhm.
Companies have been reporting over the last few months that they have not seen any increase in productivity due to AI. So that means that a lot of people are expecting that AI is not going to um, produce the outcome that they were looking for,
Wow.
right? So if everything is tied to AI, if our stocks are tied to AI, if companies are tied to AI, and the expectation of productivity in the country is tied to AI, then we need for AI to do well in order for our economy to do well. And if it
Mm,
doesn't, then we can see a crash, and it could happen as early as this year.
wow. Okay. Do you want me to
You
go into the
also
next? Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
you also have shadow banking, right?
Okay.
So when you look at um, the banking institutions, you have the regulated banks, and then you have shadow banking or financial institutions where the typical bank has to follow regulations, very specific regulations and rules in order to loan out money, for example. Now you have shadow banking or private credit companies or institutions where they are low risk credit. So the banks will loan money to the shadow banks or
Mm,
to private companies, the
that's
private
my
credit.
first time hearing of this. Go ahead.
Yes. So
Okay.
now the shadow banks, though, they're low risk, but they loan money because they have less regulation, right? They don't have to abide by the same rules as the banks. So they take money and they invest that money, they loan that money to more risky companies, right? These more risky companies, they call garbage corporations, right? They are very high risk. And we've been seeing over the past maybe 4 or 5 months, we've been seeing a domino effect occurring in the shadow banking where they loan money to companies, and these companies have been going bankrupt, right? So you have a company called Tricolor, you have First Brands, you have Sonder Hotel, you have these companies have declared bankruptcy over the past few years, over the past couple months, and that's an indication uh, in the financial markets that there is a lot of turbulence in
Mm,
the finance industry. Now, much of these companies, these private credit companies, are financing the AI revolution. Right? So they've been pouring a lot of money into AI and have not been seeing any results, as
mm,
well as they've been practicing unsound financial practices. Right? For example, what First Brands did, they went to a company and got a loan, right, with collateral. They said they have $40 million in collateral, for example. Well, they didn't just go to one financial institution. They went to a plethora of financial institutions and pledged the same collateral. So
mm,
now what happens if you have 10 institutions that are expecting that if you default, they can come and collect your collateral? If they're all expecting to collect the same collateral, they obviously cannot. So you then had First Brand declaring bankruptcy because they could not pay their debts. Right. So all of the banking and all of the AI is connected to each other,
mm.
and it's again a lot of money being pumped into the markets, into the financial institutions, and the bill is coming due, and nobody has the money to pay these bills.
And what happens if they don't have the money to pay the bills?
They go bankrupt.
Okay.
So again, a lot of these companies have gone bankrupt. Apollo is another company that is a private credit lender. One of the companies that they lend money to just reported that they lost $140 million just
Wow.
a few days ago. So again, these companies are really taking it on the chin because they're not able to uh, receive the money that they lent out.
Which means they're going to continue to lay people off.
Yes, and
Okay.
we're going to very possibly see the correction in the stock markets where we see a crash in the stocks, kind of
What
like
is that? Kind of like what?
the dot com bubble.
And I was going to ask you that. That leads me to my next question. What does it look like when the stock market collapses?
Well, the prices go down substantially, right? We
Okay.
see 40-50% decrease in the prices in a matter of a few days, few weeks, or a few months. And then it takes years for the stock market to catch back up to where they were when they hit their highs.
What happened during the dot-com bubble?
During the dot-com bubble, every company attached .com to their company because everybody was expecting that the internet was just going to, take over the world and change things and make things so much more productive, which it did overall, do well for the world. But all of the companies, just because they added .com didn't mean that they were a productive company. So we saw thousands of companies go bankrupt and their stocks go to zero because they did not have anything, any value. And so in the beginning, immediately people is as long as you saw .com at the time, you thought that the company was going to do well. The
Right.
same way we're expecting that Tesla, Meta,
Mhm.
Google, Nvidia, we're expecting that their stocks and their companies are going to do well. But the question is, Microsoft, for example, Microsoft's stock shares have gone up over the last 5 years substantially. But can we say that Microsoft software is any more productive than it was 5 years ago?
No, I don't think so.
Generally not.
Okay.
Right. So even Google or Meta, Facebook, is not actually increased in productivity. It's not increased our standard of living. Right. So at some point, people are going to revalue the companies and they're going to also pull their money out of these stocks and invest it into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the reason why we're seeing the skyrocketing in the gold and silver industries and the precious metals because people are fleeing the stock market because right now it's very turbulent, very questionable as to what the future holds for these stocks and the bonds. And when you talk about the bonds, countries are fleeing the dollar, right? They're selling off their treasury bonds.
Mm.
And so you talk about investors in the country, but you also talk about foreign investors, and then you also talk about foreign governments. They're
Mm.
all fleeing the dollar and going into the precious metals.
We had seen a rise in precious metals. I think gold had gone all the way to 5,500, almost 5,600, and silver had climbed as high as $119 an ounce. Now I'm watching this here, gold and silver going down. Silver is $85 an ounce. Gold is $4,809 an ounce. What can people are going to wonder what's happening? Do we have any idea why we keep seeing this fluctuation?
Everything is volatile, right?
Okay.
And then when right now over the last year, everybody has been flooding to gold and silver.
Right, right.
So at a certain point, you will have sellers, right? So those
Ah,
that buy into it the more buyers that you have, the more scarcity that you have of the product. So
Right.
then the prices go up. But when you have a sell off, then the prices go down. So
Mm,
people are uncertain about the price of gold because we've not seen this price before. Right?
right.
These are historic numbers that we're witnessing. So people
Yes.
are questioning whether this is sustainable. But the
Mm,
reality is that we're moving into a new financial era, right? Where the dollar is quickly becoming not the is not being used as the currency, the foreign reserve currency of the world, right? So when people flee the dollar, it's the same thing that happened when the British pound lost its status as the currency, right? People
mhm.
fled that dollar, that currency, and went to something else. Well, what they went to from the pound, they went to the US dollar.
Okay.
Now people are fleeing the US dollar and going back to gold and silver, which has throughout history has always been uh, the um, what's it
The
the
standard, the
the
reserve
exact
currency
there you
standard.
go, the
Hmm.
standard.
That's
And
why
so
you
we're going
see,
back to the standard. Go ahead.
absolutely. And as you said, the whole world is rushing back towards gold as money. King's World produced this article February 16, 2023. These central banks have been secretively accumulating gold behind the scenes in record numbers for the last 10 years that we know of.
Mhm.
So now that we see the silver and gold prices fluctuating and decreasing, some people are panic selling. What would you suggest people to do if they see these prices going down like we see today?
Buy the dip because
Okay.
they're not going to decrease too much more, right?
Okay.
There has to be a correction, right? There has to be a balance out, and so we're witnessing that correction, right? But now, if it's only been 1 year that people have been investing in the precious metals
Right.
in our lifetime,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
excuse me, which that means that more people over this next year and over the next 5 years are going to invest more heavily into the hard metals, as well as more governments. Right? We haven't we we haven't had a time period over the last 80 years where governments bought gold and silver.
Mm-hmm. No, they were
Uh,
saying gold and silver is a relic that it's outdated.
exactly, exactly. So that means that if they're now going back to the standard of storing gold as their reserves in their reserves to peg their currency to, right? They're using their gold and silver in their vaults to say that our dollar, our currency, has value tied to it based off of our hard assets. So
Mm-hmm.
if that is going to continue to happen, which we can expect it to continue because everybody is fleeing the dollar, so then we can expect that the prices of gold, silver, and copper and other precious metals is going to continue to increase as we see after this correction, right? So prices have been dropping, and that is good for investors because it's always a good time to invest, right? And
Yeah,
this
and
is a
also, go
perfect
ahead.
time to invest in those metals. Go ahead.
And I will also say to add to what you're saying, this is a perfect time to invest in those metals. Is that sometimes we say, but I can't, it's not in my budget. What I want to encourage people to do is instead of saying, I can't, ask yourself, how can I? Because there is an inexpensive way to invest in gold. You can buy gold back. So gold RM notes, which is 24 karat gold pressed onto a note. And right now you can use it to buy local goods and services in 50 states, across the 50 states. Right now, you know about the gold RM notes, Mr. Lattimore?
Yes,
Real gold.
they're a great investment. And we also have to change our mentality, change our mindset.
Okay.
Uh, Instead of saying, like you said, instead of saying that I cannot, you have to ask yourself, how can I?
Mm-hmm.
And we look at people get income taxes, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
When you get your money, this is a perfect time to invest, right? Don't
Come
go
on
buy
through
a
here.
whole bunch of fancy clothes, all right? Don't buy another car unless you need it.
Yes.
You want to invest in sound money.
Mm.
So
Here's what a
look
go
for the
back looks like.
opportunities.
Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm a hold that woman. Look for opportunities. These are go backs right here. Here's one is an Arizona go back. There's Florida go backs, Utah go backs, all type of go backs right now for $9.68. Okay, that's one way you can buy gold. But we've been talking about gold backs, Dexter, for almost about 5-6 years. No, since 2017. Back then they were $1. Now they're $10. So what would you say again when it comes to availing yourself of opportunities? Please say that again and let us know what you mean.
Yes, find the opportunities. The same way that people found the money to buy Jordans and
Mm,
buy all of these expensive clothes and buy a whole bunch of jewelry, the money's there.
mhm,
You just have to ask yourself, are you willing to invest? Right?
mm,
We are a nation of consumers. We want the nicest things. We want to buy everything. But when it comes to investing, we're hesitant to invest. All right. Once it's time to invest, we say, "Oh, I don't have any money."
mhm.
But look down at the pair of shoes that you have on and ask
Ooh-wee.
yourself how much those cost, or
Mm,
the outfit that you have, how much did that cost? And if we're
mm,
able to spend hundreds of dollars on one or two outfits or one or two pair of shoes, then we have money. We just have to change our mentality and become investors and not
mm,
just consumers.
mhm, mhm. Somebody asked, how much would you need of the gold backs? I would say, like Dexter, Mr. Lattimore always says, what you can afford, honestly. Only
Yes,
you know what you can afford. Go ahead.
exactly. And you don't have to buy it all at once, right?
Mhm.
Investing is about making small investments, right? Putting in something consistently, right?
Yes.
So it's not for the IRAs, for example, your retirement account. You're investing a small amount every month or every paycheck into that account. You can do the same thing at home.
Mhm.
You can
Come on.
buy a few ounces of silver or a few ounces of copper or a
Mhm.
few gold bags, and
Mhm.
you can tell yourself, okay, how about I invest X amount every paycheck,
I like that idea. I
right?
like that
You can say,
idea.
okay, I can afford to invest $50 a paycheck and not miss that money,
Mm.
right? This is the reason why we need to budget, right? We need to write a list of how we're spending our money because when you know where you spend your money, you know where you can cut your expenses,
Mm.
right? The individual problem in America is very much the same or similar to the government's problem, right? We are overspenders and overconsumers.
Uh-oh.
And so we have to look at what we're spending our money on and look at how we can cut our expenses. And then ask yourself, where can I invest? And
Mhm.
what is safe and sound to invest in? And again, gold and silver has always had a store of value.
Have you ever heard of the envelope method when in terms of budgeting?
Mhm.
You have?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to speak to that? Or do you want me to say?
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. So the envelope method is a method whereby, and our grandparents used to do that. You set aside cash for each thing that you will spend it on for that month. So you might set aside cash for your mortgage and put it in this envelope. I know we don't, a lot of people don't use cash now, but then you set aside cash for the electric bill, and it's cash for the car bill, and cash for entertainment. You set it, and you so you have a whole bunch of different envelope, excuse me, for your expenditures. And you don't dip into those envelopes for anything else other than what it's earmarked for. But you also have something for investments and entertainment and what do you call it? Emergency fund. I know we don't have cash now, but maybe there's a way where we can budget and utilize a system similar to that. Do you have an idea how we can recreate that in the system where we only use like electronic money in
Yeah,
terms of
well,
budget?
we still have cash.
Okay.
We may
Okay.
not use it as much or in the same ways that we did, but
Okay.
cash still exists. The dollar
Okay.
still exists, right?
Mm,
So then take out the money from your bank account.
that part.
It's just that
Okay.
simple. Like we don't need to over make things more complex than they are.
Okay.
Our grandparents and great grandparents had simplified methods.
They did.
Now we are extremely complex, and it's all for naught because we
Mm,
don't have what our grandparents and great grandparents had. They had sound investments. They invested in property, right?
they
They
did.
they had a rainy day fund. They had money stored for emergencies.
They did.
We don't have that today. We need to
Mm,
get back to the basics. Right? The financial system that we live in today is so complex that nobody understands it.
mm,
And when nobody understands it, it's good for the economy. It's good for the markets because you're going to put money into things that you don't understand, and they can use that money to prop up whatever system that they want supported. But when you simplify your own personal investments, you say, okay, what has value to me? Let's start with that.
okay.
What has value to me? And then what has value on the market, right? What has value? What can I, if I need to trade this in for cash, will I be able to get anything out of it? Right
Mm,
now in America, we're consumers. We buy depreciating assets,
yeah.
clothes, cars,
Mm.
TVs, cell phones. People found the money to be able to afford the newest iPhone every year.
It's amazing to me. Upgrading is what they call it, right?
Right. But
Hmm.
however you figured to be able to afford that is the same way that you can be able to afford investments, sound investments in these precious metals that we're discussing. It's just the mentality, right?
Mm,
When you when you work on your mentality, then you find out the ways that things are possible, right? Things are impossible until you find out how to make it possible. And we
mm,
just have to figure out how to make it possible for us to take whatever money, whatever income that we have and invest it. Now, if you don't have enough money to invest with the one income, if you have one income, get a second job, get a
oh,
part-time job. Well, this is just practical.
yes, sir.
If you don't have the money, find the money.
Mm,
If you work 40 hours, find a way to work 45, 50 hours in the week, and you don't have to do it forever. Give yourself a time frame, right? Say, okay, I'm going to work for the next few months or the next year so that I will be able to have extra money that I can invest, so that I can have extra money that I can save, right? And then once you're invested, then you don't have to work as hard.
yeah, we were talking about affordable ways to buy gold, and we mentioned gold backs. You all can go to appmex.com, sdbullion.com, jmbullion.com, goldenstatement.com, or just do online uh, gold and silver dealers, or you can go to your local coin shop. I mean, I believe in shopping locally because that way you're helping local merchants, you're establishing relationships, you're helping each other out, and it's just a wonderful way to build a network. Go there, buy you some gold backs. They have gold backs in your local coin shops typically. Buy you some fractional gold. You don't have to buy a whole ounce. You can buy a quarter of an ounce, a half an ounce. You can buy grams. You can buy silver. Silver rounds right now we just saw is like $90, $91 per ounce. You can buy half an ounce, a quarter of an ounce, grams of silver. You can even buy what's called constitutional silver. Mr. Lattimore, you've heard of constitutional silver, yes?
Yes.
Constitutional silver is silver that was minted before we got off the gold standard. The year I think was like 1965. Is that correct, Mr. Lattimore? Somewhere around there, 64, 65?
Somewhere around there. I don't know the exact date.
So constitutional silver is 90% silver. It is real silver, 90% silver. It typically costs less than your silver bullion, but it's still 90%. You can go to your local shop and ask, may I have constitutional silver? And they also call it junk silver. And why they call it junk silver, I don't know. I think that's disrespectful to silver. But you can ask your local coin shop for junk silver. You can go to the pawn shop, the antique shop, estate sales, and buy silver jewelry, silverware or sterling silver has 92% silver. Remember, our grandparents used to eat off real silverware. They had real silver utensils. 92% silver at a pawn shop, an antique shop, an estate sale. There are affordable ways, is what I'm trying to seed into your consciousness, family, to buy precious metals. Anything you want to say to that, Mr. Lattimore?
I agree. It's a matter of you figuring out how to do it. Mm-hmm. You have to find the ways to invest because it's there. It's possible for every person to be able to invest in these metals and into these different assets. But it's the mentality. If you tell yourself that you can't do something, then you won't be able to do it. The moment that you tell yourself that you can, you find ways, doors open, and things become available. And I will reemphasize what you said about going to local coin shops.
Yes.
Being able to have that person-to-person connection is important. Mm-hmm. Being able to have the communication, right? You have questions, you can actually ask your coin dealers. It's a bit different than if you're calling a company, right, and making orders online. You're not able to ask all of the questions. You're not able to be as thorough as you can when you work in person to person.
Mm-hmm. You and I have had that experience a few times where we went to our local coin dealer and had 30-minute conversations, hour-long conversations about what's going on in the markets.
Mm-hmm. And they can actually inform you on what's going on in the markets because they are actually very much active in the markets.
Before we go any further, family, I just want to say that our show is partially sponsored by Holistic. This is a local shop here. I love their products. You all have asked me, what are you doing to keep your energy high? I gave some to Dexter. Dexter has some as well. He took some this morning. I gave some to all of my children, my grandchildren. Holistic is a wonderful local company, but they ship all over. So what I'm taking right now is my black seed oil with wild oregano. This is phenomenal for parasite cleansing. Now, some people have said things like diseases like cancer and other diseases could stem from the parasites that's living in the foods that enter our body. So when you take a mixture of black seed oil and or oregano, it deals with those parasites. I showed you all on yesterday on my live or the day before where a woman had testified that she actually saw the worms, Dexter, in the stools in her bowels when she eliminated in the toilet. She actually saw. That's crazy. From taking the product. One of our Soul Tribe members here just said that they received their product. I also have just pure black seed right here, oil. And this is good for your hair, nails, and skin. When I went to my nail tech on yesterday, I said, don't cover my nails with polish. I don't want red or blue this time. I just want, give me a clear polish because I want everybody to see my nails are growing and they're very strong. They used to bend and break and twist and chip, but my nails are growing and they're very, very hard. I showed you all this the other day. I'm ecstatic about that because for the longest they were chipping. So she asked me, what are you doing differently? And I told her, the only thing I'm doing is taking black seed oil. And she said, well, black seed oil helps to maintain the melanin in your hair. This is a Vietnamese woman. And it also helps with your hair, skin, and nails, helps them become, the bonds in your hair become stronger, help your skin to become more clear, and it helps your nails to not break. So if you're interested in these products, black seed oil infused with oregano or just black seed oil, also, sea moss, which some of our Soul Tribe families say, ew, sea moss is yucky. But sea moss is good. We have sea moss there. We have honey, raw, I think it's called Manuska honey, raw honey infused with black seed oil. And we also have some raw honey infused with cacao. That's 100% pure chocolate. I bought that for my grandson. I will put that in the description section for you and in the chat. It is simply Honlistic, like honey, HONLISTIC.shop. So they are a partial sponsor of the show, along with Miles Franklin Precious Metals. So I wanted to give them a shout out and tell you all thank you so much for supporting Honlistic. And I'll put that in the chat for you because some of you can't see when I put it on the screen because the writing is so low. All right. And if you're enjoying Brother Dexter, Mr. Dexter Lattimore, it's Manuka honey. Thank you. Thank you. Then please continue to watch the show. Send him a shout out. He's working on a book. If you desire to support his work, he had told me the other day that he was so grateful that some of you were still like expressing to him that you enjoy the information that he shares. Some of you were sending him Cash App gifts and he wasn't even expecting it. So I want to give him this opportunity to express his gratitude, but you can send him a donation to $Dex Lattimore before we continue with the show.
Absolutely. I've appreciated the support from you and from your audience. It's been great to have the support. And like you said, I didn't expect it. I just wanted to come here to give the information that I have because a lot of things are going on in the markets behind the scenes, and it can become a bit complex to understand these things. And I just wanted to be able to break down some of these things. But it's always an honor to be able to receive support from you and your audience. So I definitely appreciate all of you for that.
It's a great pleasure. The Soul Tribe we do what we can to help each other. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No.
So the Adept Moore said it's called Manuka honey. I always call it Manuska honey. I apologize for that. Thank you, Adept Moore. If you all missed the show that we did yesterday, please go to my Dr. Kia Pruitt channel on YouTube because the Adept Moore, Coach Bay, came on the show and he talked about the relationship between fitness and finance. It was a great show. He is a scholar. Like you could tell he's been to college because he had slideshows. He had all type of references to support his claims. He read from abstracts and research papers, scholastic research papers. He wanted you all to know he knew his information. I really appreciate the show that he did on yesterday. Thank you, Adept Moore. We appreciate you. And if you missed that show, family, let me show you right here. You can go to the Dr. Kia Pruitt channel. There are many copies of my channel, okay? People that's just mimicking me, but my name is at Dr. Kia Pruitt Official, but it is the Dr. Kia Pruitt Show. You see the video section shorts. We go to the live section and you'll see we did a show here, the relationship between fitness and finance. I hope you all can see that. Yeah. It's me with my flexing my arm in my red outfit because I've been working out, trying to get ready for this new season. All right, Mr. Lattimore, we've talked about silver and gold, stocks and bonds, real estate, but we haven't talked about rare earth minerals. What should we know about rare earth minerals? Like who's producing them, who has rare earth minerals, whatever you want to talk about as it relates to rare earth minerals.
Well, China is the main producer of rare earth minerals in the world.
Okay.
So most countries have rare earth minerals, right? America, for example, we have plenty of rare earth minerals, but we don't have the factories to produce the rare earth minerals.
Mm,
So China took on that production cost about 30 years ago, right? Where they were the ones who actually invested in the factories to produce these minerals.
mm,
Almost no other country has the capability to produce these minerals, to manufacture them. So we, all the countries of the world have been using China to manufacture these products and then to distribute them
okay.
respectively to the countries. America obviously is in a conundrum because we cannot produce these rare earths. And last year, China, for example, actually restricted the amount of rare earths being sold to America. So now America has been talking about since Trump has been in office the fact that we need to be able to produce, right? We don't produce most of the goods that we consume.
Mm, okay.
So we're extremely high consumers. We're the number one consumers of the world, but the rest of the world subsidizes our consumption. The rest of the world produces and overproduces in order for us to be able to consume the products that we have.
Mm,
Now, all of these countries have been turning away from the US and been looking at being more concerned about themselves as a nation.
mm,
America is at the point where we have to become producers because the rest of the world is no longer interested in subsidizing our consumption.
mm. Okay. I'm going to let you go on. You talked about us being consumers. What are your thoughts about us being consumers versus producers? I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go off the screen for a minute, take some of my oregano and black seed. But what are your thoughts about us being producers and consumers, and what do we need to do to rectify that?
Well, again, we are 100% consumers and we produce almost nothing that we consume. So clearly you can see a problem with that, right? We don't have a productive, we have a financial market or a financial economy. We don't have a production economy. So the whole system that we have is based on the money printing that we have. Now we're in a point where the money printing does not help us as a society. And we cannot consume the things that we don't produce. When you look at all of your products in your house, for example, you can start with your cell phone, you can look at your television, you can look at the food in your refrigerators. The vast majority of these products come from outside the country. So
Mm,
that creates a huge dependency on every other country involved for us to be able to consume whatever it is that we consume. Well, we are in a time period where things have changed drastically. Countries are no longer supporting our consumption in the manner that they were. So we as a country, we're having to bring back. This is the reason why Donald Trump talks about bringing back factories, right? It's going to create jobs. Yes, that's wonderful. But we have to increase our productivity
mm,
because we as a country are lazy and spoiled, right? We're going to see a lot of things change, right?
okay.
Uh, people, people are going to have a new diet based on the fact that if you look at uh, the fact that we have a McDonald's on every corner, for
Mm,
example, we
mm.
have uh, fast food restaurants everywhere, but we don't see cows and pigs in an abundance. Then we have to ask the question: where on earth are we getting the meat?
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Why don't we see any new cemeteries?
That's a good question.
That's scary. No cows, no hogs, no lamb, no goats, like what I used to see when I was growing up, and no new cemeteries being built, but yet people are passing away every single day. That's scary to me.
Mhm.
What are
Because
they doing with these bodies?
that is a question that I'll leave for your audience to ponder on, because that's an important question that we have to ask ourselves. What are we actually eating?
Mm,
We don't know. And where's the food coming from? That we also don't know.
mm,
But that's just the meat, right? When you look at, again, the fruit doesn't come from here, right? So what are we actually growing? What are we actually producing? Right? The US created uh, a global monoculture
mm.
system
Okay.
where every country produces one or two things. Right? We produce soybeans
Mm,
and corn.
okay.
That's the reason why we have corn syrup in all our products, because that's what we produce. But
Hmm.
now we overproduce in these products so that we can export them to other
Mm,
countries. But outside of those products, we don't have things that we produce in abundance.
mm.
So then we cannot satisfy the need for our own population.
Now I don't know if you just went into detail. I was taking my sea moss. Somebody said sea moss is nasty. I just opened it. I just cracked it open. You can see that this sea moss has mango in it, and it is actually delicious. It's a consistency of baby food, and I just took it. It's good. Mm-mm. I'm sorry. It's actually delicious. I just wanted to say that, but
We have to
um,
change our palates. Just going to that point, we have to change our palate. What we
mm,
consider good is usually not good for us. It's
uh-oh.
usually high sugar, high corn syrup, right? Fructose corn syrup, and they make in America, they make the products to be good to our palate, to taste good,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
they are also simultaneously destroying our bodies from the inside.
Woo.
So we have to consider everything that tastes good is not good for us, and things that don't necessarily taste good are often the best for us when we talk about what's good for our health.
Mm.
Now,
And by the way, I got this from Holistic, the company that sponsors our show. Go ahead, Mr. Lattimore.
I was just going to say we talk about wealth on this channel,
A
but
lot.
what's the most important form of wealth? It would be your health,
Mm.
right? Because if you are able to accumulate all of this wealth that we're discussing on your show, and you're unhealthy, one heart attack can be the end of you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not invested in your health, then you can throw away all of the other discussions because it's irrelevant. To become a millionaire and then die the next day
Mm.
means that your wealth was irrelevant.
Mm. Mm. Now you mentioned, thank you for that. You mentioned monoculture. I don't know if you actually explained that. What does that actually mean?
It means that every country produces one good, one or two goods based on uh, their strategic advantage, right?
Okay.
So uh, if Italy can produce wine at a high level, but they don't uh, produce corn, right? If their country's not able to produce corn in abundance, then they're not going to produce corn. They're only going to produce wine. And America, on the other hand, will produce the corn, and these countries will trade their goods
Mm.
for one for the other. Uh, the Banana Republic, right? All of these Latin American countries that produce bananas as their main exporting product, they generally do not produce other products aside from that one product. Ukraine produces wheat. So most of the world gets their wheat from Ukraine. Most of the world gets their soybeans from America. Most of the world gets their bananas from the Banana Republic, right? But no country is producing all of these goods for their own consumption. They produce one or two that they have the most strategic advantage in, and then they export that and they import all of the other goods.
I'm wondering if President Trump is trying to change that, because under his first administration, he created the USMCA, United States, Mexico, and Canada, which was a trade agreement between these three nations. Do you foresee him trying to do what he can to eradicate that monoculture culture or system?
Yes, I believe that it's really inevitable.
Okay.
Because again, if we have trade wars, which we've been having over the last year, then we become very vulnerable. Any country that decides that they don't want to export their products to America, that means that we can easily have a crisis, like not just the food, but when you talk about semiconductors, for example, we had a semiconductor crisis a few years ago because Taiwan is the only country that was producing semiconductors, or the main country, the number one country producing. And when they had whatever occurred in their system that occurred a few years ago, it put a shock into the American system. This is the reason why the used car prices exploded over the a few years ago, because when you're dependent on one country for anything, if they have any problems or if they cut you off for any reason, then you are extremely vulnerable.
I love the way you did that. That's a perfect segue into the automobile collapse. Because we've been talking about the everything bubble. Okay, monoculture. So you had one particular country that were producing the semiconductors, and that led to, you were saying, the automobiles, the what is it? The old automobiles. What do you call it? Used cars. The prices exploded, and that was like 2023.
Yes.
My car that I bought for $17,000 is now only worth $9,000 today.
Exactly. Because 5 years ago, it was worth $9,000. But when we had the shortage, the semiconductor shortage, it went from 9,000 up to 17,000. Because again, there's scarcity. Prices is all about scarcity of goods, right? Supply and demand and scarcity. There's not an infinite amount of resources. There's a finite amount of any resource that we talk about. So then when people need that resource, the demand is high and the supply is limited, then the prices of those goods are going to go up, right? So when they said we have a semiconductor problem, that meant that we could not produce cars at the level that we wanted to be able to, or at the level of demand. So then that means that the prices of all of the cars that are already on the market goes up, because there's still a high demand for cars. And then when you add on the fact of immigration, for example, led to an even higher demand in these products, then the price just goes up astronomically. But now, fast forward to today, car companies are having a real problem selling cars. There are no buyers.
That's true.
And that's in nearly every market right now. There are no buyers. There are sellers. You talk about the housing market. There are sellers. People, the reason why the prices are going down, the prices are going down in the housing market is because when you put your house on the market last year at $300,000, no one bought it. So then you had to change the price, $280,000. No one bought. $250,000. No one's buying. $200,000. People are taking their houses off the market because there are no buyers. Because again, we are having a liquidity crisis. People don't have cash. And the problem with our financial institution is that any financial crises that we have, we've been able to just print the money. Well, we're not able to just print the money and solve the problems the way we did. And if they print too much money, then it actually, that in itself causes its own set of problems. So the feds are having to be very careful about the different tools that they have used in the past to get us out of recessions and financial crises. These tools are not working today.
When I'm noticing that while these things are happening, like we have a bubble, and I put it in the chat for you all to see that we have housing. Mr. Lattimore spoke of real estate, bonds, stocks, shadow banking, rare earth minerals, metals, precious metals, gold and silver, automobile. All these things are collapsing. We had a bubble. Everything's being burst right now. It's collapsing. What I'm noticing, though, at the same time this is happening, I see President Trump doing certain things. I want to know if you can speak on this, Mr. Lattimore. I saw President Trump withdraw us from 66 international organizations. I saw him create the Board of Peace, and he said that will replace the United Nations, and 22 countries have joined. I see him taking critical steps, it looks like, to put us in a better place. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, a few things. One, we cannot afford all of these institutions, right? Because most of these global institutions that we're a part of, we finance the majority of them.
Oh, okay.
Then also, we're entering a new era where the ways of the old world do not work anymore. And so Trump is pulling all of the things that you just mentioned. He's recreating new systems and new organizations because the old organizations have failed to produce the results that they were promised. So the United Nations, for example, the United Nations has not stopped any wars, right? So it's great on paper, but in practice, it doesn't actually hold its weight. So then if we're financing the United Nations and it doesn't actually stop any wars or prevent wars, then what's our point in financing it? And what's the money being used for?
It's interesting because, right, what is our money being used for? Two things I want to say. It's interesting because when the Department of Government Efficiency was created under Trump and Elon Musk, they found out that United States aid wasn't really funding these emerging markets or these international, but third world countries. That they were actually pushing woke agendas to these third world countries, like gender stuff and sexual behaviors and stuff like that. The money, only 1% of the money was being earmarked for those nations. The 99% of the money was filling the pockets of the elites.
Exactly. And go ahead.
Oh, and the second thing I wanted to bring up, I want you to remember that. The second thing is now that Trump is removing us from 66 organizations, funny that they use the number 6, but they're saying he's abandoning the world. That's what mainstream media is saying. He's abandoning the world. He's making the United States vulnerable. But they found out that participating in these world organizations wasn't helping us, wasn't helping these nations, and the elites were still in the money.
Well, it was helping our agenda for the time. But again, you said they were funding a bunch of woke programs. That's what America wanted, to be able to export our ideology. Right? You talk about America funding the United Nations was about us exporting democracy, the concept, the theory of democracy. Any country that takes our money has to do what we say. And so it's been beneficial to America up until now. But we're experiencing the collapse of the empire. All right. So America cannot finance all of these things and it no longer benefits America the way it did. Because what benefited America and for what reasons in the past is not the same as where we are today.
Mm. And you see this is published by the White House. President Trump ratifies the Board of Peace in a historic ceremony, opening path to hope and dignity. They're saying for Gazans, but it's interesting because they're now saying that, oh, he created a Board of Peace in order to rectify what was going on in Gaza. But we knew about Project Sandman, which was an agreement between 209 nations to stop trading with the United States dollar and collapse the Federal Reserve central banking system. And they all agreed to world peace. We found out about that in 2017. But they're using whatever's happened in Gaza as the reason for creating the Board of Peace. Why do they do things like that? Like make up excuses for why they're doing things?
To be able to rationalize to the general public what's going on, and for the people to be able to understand and consume the information. Right? You don't want to create too big of a scare to the public. They don't. Right? Those in power, they want things to be able to run smoothly, even if there's a transition in, whether it's a transition in power or transition in finances, the financial systems. They want for there to be a smooth transition and not too many hiccups. Okay. So they'll create the narrative, whatever narrative works for them at the time. Like you mentioned, for example, the situation in Gaza. That's the reason why they're talking about this peace organization that he's created. Mm-hmm. The situation with ICE, they're using that as the reason that we're having another government shutdown.
That's weird. Yes, they are.
But the citizens can accept it.
Oh, I see.
Right? If you say, well, we're having another government shutdown because we had the same problems as the last time we had to shut down, people are like, well, why did we open? Why is it shut? What's going on? And then the protests will not be, the protests will be leaderless. They want to be able to put the leaders to the protest and be able to guide everything into how they want it to go. Right, this ice storm that we just had, it froze the nation, but it's getting everybody prepared for the potential government shutdown because the financial system is frozen. Right, we're having a whole lot of problems, but you can't just come out and say to, for example, you look at the stock market. If Fox News went on air and said, you know what, the stock market is having a problem, what does that do? That creates a run on the stocks. People will immediately pull their money out, even if there wasn't a recession that was going to come. They will be the creator and the cause of the recession because people will panic. So they don't want people to panic, so they give these narratives. And that's why at the last show I mentioned that we are living in the Truman Show.
Yes.
It's only at the end of the movie that Truman actually realized that everything was a show and it was all a stage. It's only after the collapse that the general public will understand that the system has in fact collapsed. And all the way up until that point, they will consider everybody that speaks on the collapse as a conspiracy theorist. All right. That's the mainstream's way of decrediting any critical thinkers. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, you're full of it. You know, I don't know where you must have been listening to Peter Schiff. Right. He's doom and gloom. You must be one of those guys. But until it crashes, the system will never say that it's on its way to crashing.
Right. I'm gonna keep going. I want you to talk about more Peter Schiff. You've been listening to Peter Schiff for a while. I believe he's an economist, but talk about some of his ideologies and why you decided to listen to Peter Schiff, who sounds like an Austrian economist versus a Keynesian economist. But what principles does Peter Schiff have that you espouse?
I I listened to Peter Schiff because he talked about the global financial crisis that occurred in 2008. He foresaw it. And when I was watching at the time in 2006, 2007, he was talking that there's a bubble in the housing market. He was being told that he was incorrect. He even got kicked off of a lot of shows because he was the doom and gloom guy. But he was just giving his assessment of the markets. Now, again, mainstream wants for everybody to consistently invest in the markets. So they're going to always say, oh, things are good, right? It's very rare an occasion that you will hear any mainstream person talk about there being problems in the financial or the stock market until it occurs. And then they talk about what happened, but they generally don't tell you that there's a bear market on its way. Peter Schiff was one of the lone wolves at the time that predicted the housing market collapse and predicted the financial global financial crisis of 2008. And he also was encouraging people to invest in gold at that time in 2008. And it's only been up until last year where other financial advisors have actually been promoting gold and silver, and he's been doing this for decades.
Mm, mm. You have shared so much. And if I could recap, I would say we talked about the housing market, we talked about real estate, rare earth minerals, gold and silver, the automobile industry. You talked about the banking. What was that new phenomenon? I never heard shadow banking.
Mhm.
All of these things are seemingly attached to the United States dollar.
Yes.
And all of this is attached to the United States Incorporated, that empire that was a huge empire. But
Yes.
Babylon is falling.
Mhm.
Babylon is falling. Babylon is falling. We sang it in church. Babylon is falling. On the one hand, they're saying it's doom and gloom, but for us, the soul tribe, the human race, this is a time to rejoice if we avail ourselves of the opportunities and prepare.
Yes.
What are your final thoughts as we wrap up the show today that you want to leave the soul tribe? Well, you got time that you want to leave the soul tribe with, Mr.
Sure.
Lattimore,
Final
economist.
thoughts are to
Okay.
research what it is that you want and what you want to invest in. Look at look at this year. We're at the beginning of the year. Right? People need to write a plan for the year, right? Write up their budgets. People need to look at where they're spending their money and to find ways, new ways to be able to invest. If you are not invested now, this is the time to invest. It's an excellent opportunity for people to invest because uh, you have a lot of bubbles, and a lot of these bubbles will burst. Right, the bubbles being inflated, right, consistently getting bigger and bigger, but without having more productivity. So
Mm,
when we see the deflation, then this is the best time to buy. All right. When you talk about the 1929 stock market crash, prices went straight to the bottom. Now, a lot of people lost their investments, but then there were new buyers at the bottom.
mm,
We are entering a time period where we're about to hit rock bottom for these companies. And now there are going to be companies that have practiced sound business. They will do well. They will continue to do well. But those that did not will see corrections. All right. So this is the best time in our lifetimes to invest. Also, like you mentioned, we're witnessing the collapse of the United States corporation, right? And so things are about to are changing. They are changing, not about to. They are changing, and they will continue to change. We're in a transitional period. right? You talk about 50 years ago, the CEO to employee ratio of the earnings were about 30 to 1. Now they're like 300 to 1. So
Wow.
the CEOs are millionaires, hundreds, of millions of dollars that they're receiving, and they're still paying minimum wage. So that is one of the things that I'm expecting will change, because all of the money that these CEOs have, they have more than they need, right? And a lot of it is invested in the stock market. Right? And it's hard to pull out your money from the stock market. Right? Most people will not just pull their money straight out of the stock market, because you immediately have to pay 30% in taxes. So people are afraid to pull their money out of the stock market, but the stock market is due for a correction, and people are expecting for a collapse in a lot of these stocks. So this is a perfect time to invest. Look at emerging markets, look at foreign currencies, look at hard assets, right? Look at land, because land always has value. Find appreciating assets, buy appreciating assets, and limit yourself on the purchases of depreciating assets.